Perfect. So let's start from the beginning, right? I don't believe that you're playing too automatically. You're playing like out of what you have seen before, but you're not thinking too much about what's going on the position in terms of an evaluation of the situation and then generating a plan, for example. Let's see how it works in the game, right? We play b3, e6. All right, this is just more or less a common opening here, and this is a Collie-Zucker system, basically, which I do play a lot with the white pieces, with the pawn on d4, the pawn on e3, bishop d3, and these kind of things. So bishop d7 is the first mistake that I can see in this game, because the problem that we have here is that the square d7 is not so natural for this bishop. See how, first of all, the problem that you have is that you're stopping the mobility of your queen when you move your bishop to d7, and that's kind of annoying for your position. Also, another problem is that generally this bishop goes out through b7, and sometimes an idea that you can try to implement is to move your queen to c8 and then try to trade this bishop for this one on d3. It's an idea that happens often. Also, the bishop on d7 doesn't look so nice, as you want generally to play something also like bishop d6, queen e7, and rook d8, and try to control this file here. So that bishop d7 is just simply not too harmonious, if that makes sense. It's a move that doesn't look so flexible. Another move could have been simply b6, for example, to defend the pawn, and then everything will be protected. You can keep the game with bishop d6, castle towards the king side, for example, and we're gonna see what happens next, right? So bishop d7 is the first mistake that I can see here in terms of positional game. See how it is just limiting your own position and your own options. That's something that you do not want, right? So the next problem that I see is that in this position you said, just here, that you wanted to castle towards the queen side because there were already too many pieces pointed at the king side, right? You said, alright, but the problem is that it was kind of too shallow, it was kind of too superficial there. We need a little bit more of conscious thought about it, because it is our king, right? We have to decide where do we want to move our king, and our king is the most important piece on the board. So we cannot simply say, well, I'm gonna castle towards the queen side. We have to try to see what's going on the board and try to generate an idea based on the situation that we are facing. So here, I agree with you in the sense that, alright, I have some pieces pointing at the king side, but at the same time you have to see that if you go for the queen side, then you'll get a file which is gonna be open. You realize that, but after you castle towards the queen side, right? You have to see that before, because otherwise then suddenly you're in a position where your king is really open, and everything starts to crumble apart. So that's something that you cannot allow yourself to do here. Like, it was too little thought about a decision which is quite important, and I believe that it is due to a lack of evaluation a little bit. So how does it work when we're talking about evaluation? First of all, what we want to do is we want to see what's going on with our pieces, right? If I were the black pieces here in this position, I'll be thinking about my position. So, and I'll be thinking about the problems that I'm facing, and how would I do that, right? You might be thinking, all right, the way I will try to do so is I'll be looking at all the pieces, and I'll be trying to figure out what do I want to do with them, what's the problem that I am facing, and a way to solve it. So here, for example, I will start by saying that my bishop on d7 is kind of weird. My bishop on f8 needs to be developed. My knights are in decent squares, right? It's like this knight on c6 seems like a logical square to generate pressure on d4. Also, the knight on f6 seems like a logical square to have a knight protecting the square e4. That's alright, okay? Also, my king is on the center. I need to figure out a way to castle. When it comes to the pawn structure, the problem that I have is that, well, I want to fight for the center, and I'd like to try to figure out a way to get the control of the square e5 if I could, or just to try to generate some pressure on the center. Also, my rook on a8 seems like a little bit out of the game. My rook on h8 is just out of the game as well. In general, my position is just playable, right? So what would I like to play right now? Or what do I want to do based on what I have just told you, right? First of all, I realized that one of my problems is that my king is on the center. So for me to get my king out of the center, I have to see how to proceed, right? The first problem that I have is that my bishop is on f8 if I want to castle towards the king side, and the second problem that I have is that if I want to castle here, then maybe I need to get my queen out, right? So All right, that's like my first evaluation of the position in terms of what's going on with my pieces. Then I want to see what's going on with his pieces, What's going on with the white pieces here. Because chess is a game of two players. I cannot just decide what I want to do based on what I want to do. I want to generate a plan or a strategy based on the moves of the other guy as well and the situation of the other guy as well. So here, what I will do is basically the same that I did before with the black pieces, but with the white pieces. What's going on with the position of the white pieces? So first of all, we start to analyze and we say that the king on e1 needs to go out of the center. Also, we see that the pieces are in really decent squares. They seem logical squares. We see that the knight on f3 is coming to e5. The knight on d2 is coming to f3. We see that the bishop on d3 seems like it has a really decent square. We see that the bishop on b2 is protecting the square e5 as well, even though it is close right now because, well, the pawn on d4 is stopping me from having any activity here in this diagonal. At the same time, it has its good side, which is that it is giving me control of the square e5. So, what's the problem that the white pieces have in this position? Well, basically that you need to castle, you need to bring your rooks into the game, and you need to try to fight for the center, whether with c4 or knight e5, and then probably f4, knight f3, and all these things, right? So those are the things that are happening in the position of the white pieces. Also, when it comes to the central situation, when it comes to what's going on in the center, we can see that there is tension, as you said. There's a lot of tension on the center. The pawn on d4 is capturing here. The pawn on c2 might come to c4 and then try to generate an open file here. And that's something that we have to see, right? So with the black pieces, I'll be considering a couple of things. One of them is that if this pawn takes this pawn here, what's going to happen is that this file is going to be open, right? So maybe one of my candidate moves, or the moves that I'd like to calculate so that I can bring an answer to the position that I have, is rook c8, due to the fact that this file here is likely to get open in the future, and a rook on c8 might be useful in that situation. That seems like a logical idea. Also, in this kind of positions, something that the black pieces usually do is that they play queen c7 or rook c8 with the idea of threatening things like knight b4. So I'm going to explain you that just in a second. Rook c8, for example, and then what's going to happen is that I have to play a3. Because if I don't do that, then there are moves like knight b4 or c takes d4 in the future. For example, let's say I castle here. You can play knight b4, and if I move my bishop backwards, then what's going to happen is that you can take here, and you're taking the pawn on c2, because that's dangerous, and I'll be losing a pawn. And if I don't do that, then I'll be losing the pair of bishops, That's an idea that can happen in these kind of situations. So see how I'm generating an idea now out of the situation and the circumstances on the board. I get the idea of castling towards the queen side, and then I try to analyze that, right? If that's going to be my plan, if that's going to be my ideal situation, I'll try to figure out what's going on, right? And if that's good for me or not. So let's say that I want to figure out if castling towards the queen side is good or not. Then first of all, I have to realize that I have already moved the pawn on c7, right? And the problem that implies is that the pawn on c7 is one of the protectors of my king when I castle towards the queen side, right? That's important for me to know. Remember that people will say a lot that you do not have to move the pawns in front of your king unless it is necessary, right? Yeah. The reason why is because they are the guys who are protecting your king. So in this position, I have already moved this pawn to c5, which means that this pawn is not on c7 anymore, which gives me certain squares to work upon in the future with the white pieces. So that's dangerous. That's a first sign that we shouldn't castle towards the queen side, right? That the pawn is not on c7. Make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like I told you, I think I have a tendency to maybe like play the same opening no matter what the opponent do, and then I just try to force you into playing the opening I want to play. Understand what?
Exactly. But that's due to a lack of evaluation, I believe. Because you have to see what's going on with his pieces, and if the plan that you have before, like the plan of just simply using the same opening that you have used before, is going to work or not, or you have to change your plan, right? And if you're not evaluating and you're just throwing the moves, then what's going to happen is that your opening is not going to be as efficient, So you have to be tremendously careful with that. And here, for example, that's a first tell that our plan of castling towards the queen side is not going to work, and we have to change that right now, right? Also, another thing that we have to see is that the white pieces have it like really simple to break this file here and open this file here with really dangerous consequences for the king on c8, which might be tremendously discovered then, and which could imply that in the future there are going to be like really dangerous positions for your king. So that's another idea that is telling us, no, don't castle towards the queen side because it's going to be dangerous, right?
Yeah.
Also, here in this position, let's see what's going on in the king side, right? Let's discern if castling towards the king side is better than towards the queen side. Alright, there's a bishop pointing towards the king side. That can be dangerous. There is a knight which can go to a5. Alright, makes sense. A knight can go to f3. Okay. But is that so dangerous as it seems? I don't think so. Because, first of all, you have a knight on f6. Your pawns are like in the natural squares to defend your king. Your knight on f6 is a natural protector of the square h7. That's good for you. Also, there might be maneuvers like knight e7, knight g6 if you needed more defenders in the king side. That could be nice. Another thing that I don't like about bishop d7, for example, is that generally in these kind of positions, people try to play something like knight d7 and then knight f6 with knight e4, you know? That's something that can happen. So, with your bishop on d7, you're stopping yourself from doing so. And that's a problem, you know, in terms of strategy. So, we have already analyzed the things that are going on the board, right? And now it is time for us to realize what is going to be the conclusion. Remember that in chess, we always have a beginning, we have a middle game, and we have a conclusion, basically. And once we have done the evaluation, which is the first stage, we have to go for the next one. We have to start to figure out the candidate moves, right? And the candidate move that we have now is rook c8. Maybe bishop d6, because I want to solve the problem that I want to castle. Maybe bishop e7, right? Maybe what other move can I play in this position? Those are like the main ones. Maybe queen c7 is another move that you can try to play, because you're moving your queen here and trying to push e5 in certain positions. That's alright. And the idea of knight b4 works as well with your queen, because your knight and your queen will be making pressure on c2 and forcing me to play a3, basically. Queen c7 is another move that makes sense. So then we start to analyze the position and we try to figure out what to do, right? Another move which is possible here is just simply c takes d4, I guess. Just trying to release a little bit the tension on the center, like after c takes e4, e takes d4, and then what's happening here is that this bishop is closed forever, and then that's kind of a problem for me, but at the same time that's playable for the white pieces. So those are some candidate moves, right?
Why don't you retake with the f3 knight there?
Oh, like knight takes. I don't think that's a move that I like to play that much, because that's giving you a space for playing e5 and controlling the center.
Yeah.
You know, like after bishop d6, maybe e5 is coming and you'll simply castle and bring your rook to e8, for example, where you'll have a lot of control of the center. So that's something that I don't want to play generally in these kind of positions, because that gives the black pieces a lot of counterplay, and that's kind of annoying. So generally here I take with the e-pawn. I don't take with the bishop as well, because that's simply giving you the pair of bishops, and at the same time you'll have e5 in the future maybe, and that's dangerous for me. So in this position generally I take with the pawn. So those are some things that we have to consider, right? And then we start to think about them, we start to try to figure out what to do, and we have to make these evaluations constantly, so that our moves are actually something that makes sense in terms of the position that we are, and we are not playing just automatically. Does that make sense? So here queen b6, right? But see how I didn't even consider queen b6, because even though queen b6 seems to make a little bit of sense here, because you're generating some pressure, you are not working on the problems that you have in the position, which is basically that you need to castle towards a safe place, and also that you need to finish your development, right? So in this position I would recommend rook c8, bishop d6, or c takes d4, just to release a little bit of the tension here. And those are moves which make sense, right? So in this position, let's say bishop d6, for example, something playable. And let's say I castle towards the king side, which is what I wanted to play. And you're in a really decent position, nobody's dying yet. Maybe c takes e4 is an option. And then you can try to figure out a way to proceed with maybe even knight e7 in the future, knight e6, etc, etc. So that's something playable, right? So see how in this position you're not evaluating the position properly, and you're just forcing your opening one more time, just what you said before. So that's important for us to see, right? Queen b6, c4. See how from the moment that you said that you wanted to castle towards the queen side, I realized that I needed to open the queen side. And how do I do that? I simply just push the pawn. Also, I don't want these kind of moves like c4 to come, which is annoying because then my bishop is pinned, and I don't want that. So c4 is a move that makes sense. I'm fighting for the center. I'm also bringing my rook here probably in the future so that I can try to generate threats on this file. I am just finishing my castle soon, and that's something that makes sense. And in this position, you castle queenside, and this is just a little bit crazy right now, you know, because there are too many things which are not good with that castle, which is this file is going to be open. This pawn is not on c7. This knight here, well, it looks like it is defending, but I don't know how good is that knight at the end of the day, because I guess after a move like a4, b4, b5, I can generate some threats. I can castle, and then after I castle, I can bring my rook, my queen to e2, my rook to c2, my other rook to c1, and see how I'm generating like a lot of pressure here. And let's imagine, just for a second, also something that is important for us is that we cannot only think about our moves, we have to think about his, right? So we do not only have to think about how dangerous is it for us to castle towards the queen side, sorry, but we have to also think about how dangerous is it for me as the white pieces to castle towards the king side, and what attack is going to be the fastest, you know, it's going to be the most rapid one. Because let's imagine here, you castle here, right? And you didn't say a word about this, but let's imagine that I castle towards the king side in this position. Who is going to come first to kill the other guy? That's important for us, right?
Yeah.
Because in these positions, we're facing a castle in the opposite side of the board. That means that we're going to start to throw pieces at each other, and we're going to try to kill each other, right? So that's the first thing that we have to see. It is harder, I can see in this position, for you to try to kill me with this pawn avalanche here, than for me to try to simply open files and then bring my pieces and then generate threats here in this position. So that's another problem that you have with castling towards the queen side, which is that your attack is not fast enough, right? And also see how you haven't finished your development, and I have already finished my development, and that's a problem that you have as well. So here, I decided to take because I wanted to open files as soon as I can. So pawn takes, and then knight takes, right? And in this position, I just played rook c1 because I thought that was like a logical move. And here, it was tremendously weird for me that you just said, well, I'm just gonna try to take on e3 with something, and let's see what happens, right? If you do that, then that's good for me, you know, because you're not calculating what's going to happen. If you want to sacrifice, that's all right, you know, like, okay, I can sacrifice, go for it, but you have to calculate and you have to analyze, you know, because in chess, there are two kinds of sacrifices. There are like sacrifices which are calculated, and there are the other sacrifices which are called speculative sacrifices, you know. And they're called speculative for some reason, you know, which is that you do not calculate it all, or you do not calculate all the things that can happen, and you just hope that the things that are going to happen are good for you, you know. And that's something that you do if you are in time constraints, you know, or if there are too many variants, you know, like sometimes in chess there are so many variants that you cannot calculate them all, and you have to go for this just feeling that the sacrifice is gonna be alright. That's not to say that you do not have to calculate, you know, you have to calculate as well, but you'll leave some variants out of your calculations, and that's what an speculative sacrifice is. So in this position, you're making an speculative sacrifice without actually calculating the lines, and that's not good, right? Also, I'm gonna throw you a couple of advices here, or tips, when you want to generate a sacrifice, right? So that you can see if your sacrifice is gonna work or not, even before calculating anything. So first things first, something that's good for you in this position, for example, is that you have to try to figure out if there is something on e3, right? You have some threats on e3. That's okay. That's like the first thing that comes to your mind. But also, we have to see the position entirely, right? And we have to see the green lights and the red lights. So we're going to start to see the green lights and the red lights. First of all, we have to try to see if we have more pieces attacking than the other guy has defending, you know? If we have more pieces attacking than the other guy has defending, that's a green light, you know, that's telling us, let's go, let's kill the guy. That's good for us, right? So let's first think, first of all, let's think about it. We have a knight, another knight, a bishop, a queen which can come to e2, And those are 4 pieces defending the position of my king right now. How many pieces do you have attacking?
3.
3, right? You have this knight here, this bishop here, and this queen. And maybe, just maybe, a little bit of an f-ray here. So, but that doesn't seem enough, right? That seems like kinda too little for you to try to kill. So, that's a red light. That's telling us, no, the sacrifice is not gonna work. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, also, we have to think about the safety of our kings, you know? If your king is really safe, that's a green light. If your king is unsafe, that's a red light, you know? And is your king extremely safe right now?
No, it's not.
It is not, right? So that means that that's another sign that this is not going to work. So, kind of not going to work. So we have 2 red lights right now. That's a problem that we have. Now we have to think about the control of the center. Do you have the control of the center?
No.
It is kind of like we all are fighting for the center, right? We have like knight here defending, a bishop here, my bishop here is protecting these squares, my pawn can go to e4 in certain positions and try to take control of these squares as well. Your pieces are like in the center, but they're not like overwhelmingly controlling the center or anything like that. It's just like, all right, we're fighting for the center. And also I have a little threat on g7, which could be annoying. So that means at the center you do not have the control of it. That's another red light, right? So that's 3 lights already, and that's like a lot, you know. Also, in terms of development, generally speaking, if you have the better development and if you have the most space, then you can try to calculate for a sacrifice. And in this position, in terms of development, we're almost equal, because I'm just a move ahead, or a move from getting castle, and also my rook is on c1. So you do not have an advantage in terms of development, so no, not gonna work, you know. Those are like 4 lights which are telling us the sacrifice is not gonna work, you know. So this is like a little shortcut. Of course, you can find some positions which have a paradox, and basically you can sacrifice even if you do not have these requirements. But generally speaking, these requirements are needed for you to generate a sacrifice which is gonna work, you know. So first things first, we have to see that the sacrifice is going to work due to the fact that we have enough green lights. If that's not going to work, then we discard it, right? And we go for some other move. And in this position, you just played this in a couple of seconds. And the analysis wasn't convincing, you know? The analysis was like too superficial. You go here and you say, well, I'm going to sacrifice. What do I sacrifice? The bishop. And how? And then I take with my knight, and I have a knight on e3. And then my knight on e3 is going to be on e3. And what's going to happen then? You know? Like, all right, that makes sense. But then what? You know? It's not as if you sacrifice and then you sacrifice and everything is going to work. You need to have a plan and idea behind it. So in this position, also something interesting is that if you give away a piece here on e3, remember that you had 3 pieces attacking? Now you have 2. So that's 4 pieces defending and 2 attacking. So see how that's even less likely to work now. And that's a problem. There are not enough open files for you to try to take advantage of this with rooks. There are not active bishops which can try to take diagonals or anything. This bishop here is restrained as well, so that's not good. And now e5. e5 kind of makes sense because you want to open the position, but after knight c4, knight takes c4, rook takes c4, and see what we are doing here? We are trading pieces, you know? And if you do not have pieces to attack with, then you do not have an attack. So in this position, I want to trade pieces, and I go for that. Knight takes, rook takes, and you have less pieces to attack. So your attack was 3 pieces before, now it is just your queen. And there, 1, 2, 3, and maybe even this rook here because it is like pinning your knight. And too many defenders, so not gonna work, right? King b8, queen f2, want to trade pieces, queen here, bishop c3, and then a little blunder here. But
little if
but you know what I mean, right? It's like the problem here is that also the blunder can be due to the fact that you are not evaluating. And evaluations are tremendously important in chess. Like if you're not evaluating, you're giving an immense advantage to your opponent. And something that I want to tell you here is that when you watch videos, for example, on YouTube and stuff, you'll see that generally the problem that you have is that you sit down and you watch that let's say a GM or an international master or whatever, a strong player, sits down and basically throws lines at you, right? He says, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to do this. And it looks almost as if he's not evaluating the position and he's just throwing ideas, you know? But the guy's evaluating the position unconsciously because he has seen so many different positions before that now the evaluation is almost automatic. But that doesn't mean that the guy is not evaluating, you know? The guy is evaluating, and then he's acting upon the evaluation that he has done. But for us to get accustomed to evaluate the position, we need to do that consciously. For it to become unconscious, we have to do that consciously, you know? So we have to think, and even though it can be kind of annoying sometimes to sit down and think about the position of all your pieces, like here for example, think about what's going on with your bishops, with your knights, with your queens, with your king, with your rooks, etc., 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 and your pawn structure, and then try to figure out what's going on with the pawn structure of the other guy, the king, the queen, the knight, the bishop, etc. It's necessary for you to generate an idea which goes with the spirit of the position, you know? So those are like the general ideas that we can take out of this game and that we can try to figure out what to do with them, right?
All right. This is basically something I've met a lot, where you play Stonewall against King's Indian. Now I want to move my knights to, so you can get your knight to the e4 square. Then I will move my pawn. All right. I move my pawn there, so you can't take my white bishop that easily. I want to move my queen out of the way, so and unpin my my knight. And then I want to move my knight where it sits in the center. All right. Yeah, so here I basically need to move it or take. It's my best bishop, but probably your best bishop for attacking as well. Yeah, so I will take that. Then you can, okay, move forward with your knight. That's not that good. Okay. I want to move my queen so I can move the g-pawn afterwards and kick your knight probably. Now you have two knights coming into the e4 square, and I can only remove one of them, so that's probably going to be annoying at some point. And I feel like I'm kind of running out of attacking ideas basically. Then I think I will try to get some space on the other side instead. I'll move my pawn, b-pawn. You come in. And now you have a really strong knight, but so do I basically. But that knight is now threatening my c pawn. So I probably want to develop what if I push the c pawn, then you can take, but you can then go in with, okay. Yeah, so I want to defend the c pawn basically. Now you are kicking away my knight. Yeah. So I will fall back with that one. So what do you want to do with this? Do you want to put your castle or your I keep on trying to get space on the queen side, I think. You keep on pushing me back, and I will go back with my knight. The good thing now is that I can take out your knight as well. I have to take back. Aha. That's an angry knight. Okay, I need to cover all of my pieces, so I go back with my king. I can just feel you pushing me back right now, and that's not a good feeling at all. And now you're trying to open in the middle. I think I want to keep on pushing my pawns. You move your queen probably because you don't want me to fork it. I will get my bishop a bit more active. You just move out of the way, as usual. Then I want to try to get my knight a bit more active. Then you deny that. Okay. So the question is now, do I want to release the tension in the middle, and why should I want to do that? You have pushed some of your pawns in front of your king, and I have pushed only one of them. And that one is backed by my rook. So what happens if I just take on e5? like this. Okay. Your knight on c4 is just so annoying. And I think I have to take the rook, because if not, I have to take with the queen, and then I lose my defense of the A. Or not, let me see. And your queen will come in here at some point and make my life miserable. But I have to move my pieces forward. And I can get a pretty nice spot for my knight, I think. The only problem is it's on the wrong side, so it's on the queen side. But I really want to have my pieces on the other side. All right. Can I do something with... What happens if I take the pawn on d5 now? Will you just kick it away and then capture my e? Yeah, you will. Yeah, so now I'm starting to feel the problem of pushing my bishop up in the corner. What if I think I have to fall back again then, like this. Yeah, what to do? I try to defend it this way instead. I have to defend my knight. Like this. All right, if you haven't moved your queen, I would move my rook to f1 with tempo, and then I could kind of fix some of the situation I have going on right here. What do you want to do with this? You probably want to bring your rook into the open file. And I can't, well, I can actually. Okay, I will beat you to it. Okay. I have to take with this. Now you have even one more piece hitting that. Not good. Well, I'm basically lost here right now. You're two pawns up. So not much I can do. So you just tell me when it's no point in continuing, basically. Yeah. Yeah. Good game.
All right, let's take a look, right? I think
Yeah.
you tried to generate an analysis, but it was kind of too late, like an evaluation, but it was kind of too late. See how the pattern of not evaluating the position is so inside of your mind and inside of so many times that you have done the same thing that now it is hard for you to think about this in terms of logic and in terms of like conscious thought. So let's analyze the game, right?
Yeah, perfect. I mean,
perfect. So, okay. D4, knight f6, just okay. I like the fact that you said that this is what you commonly play, and that means that you have seen these kind of positions before. So, knight d2. I like the fact that you're saying that you do not want me to go to e4. That makes sense. Bishop g7, f4. And, alright, we're getting into a stone wall. This is just something common. But first things first, we have to try to figure out how to play the stone wall, like, in accordance to the position that the black pieces have, right? Because we have to be really careful with how the black pieces can continue in this kind of position. So, castle towards the king side, knight f3. We are getting into a pretty systematic position here. The knights are in the position where they are supposed to be. The pawns are where they are supposed to be. Probably the next ideas is just simply c3, knight e5, then castle, queen e1, and all these common things, and finally maybe bishop d2 and all this stuff, right? Those common stuff. Bishop d4 now, and I do believe that here maybe the best move is h3, something that I have seen before, and then I will probably trade this bishop for this knight, or sometimes I will play bishop f5, and I think this is possible, so that I am getting rid of your bishop, even though I get a double up pawn on f, but I believe it's playable. So, castle towards the king side, just normal, knight c6, and this knight c6 is kind of a weird idea, right? This is something that you do not see that much. But the idea is simple. I want to play e6, knight here, knight here, knight here, whoops, knight here, and then I have two knights on e4, and that's just right for me. So in this position, c3 just commonly, and e6 makes sense. Queen e1, this is just perfect. Nobody's dying yet. Knight e7, knight here, bishop f5, because evidently I don't want you to take here. That wouldn't be as good as to move my bishop to f5 and then trade it for this one. And see how now you're getting into a position where you have some problems, right? And here it is the precise moment where we have to evaluate what's going on the board. And the things that are going on the board is that you have a horrible bishop on c1. This bishop here is like, it has no squares at all. You have to figure out what to do with that, right? Your rook on a1 is just totally trapped as well. Now the bishop that is good is a bishop on d3, and I'm trading it, right? So that's something that you do not want. Also, in this position, what else is happening? My queen is on e1, it's pushing e4. That's something that I want to play, right? My rook is on f1, makes sense, because maybe in some positions you can try to push g4, and that's alright. Also, in this position, what else is happening in terms of the white pieces? What's the problem that you have? You have this bishop on c1, this rook here, and the central situation that you have to resolve, because this pawn on e3 is also a weakness. So, you have to figure out how to try to move this pawn up to break the position, or how to close the position and then play with g4 and throw an attack on the king side. So, those are like the two plans that you have here. And, well, if the plan is to throw an attack, how do we do that, right? First of all, we cannot trade pieces, because if we trade pieces, we do not have anything to attack with, and we need things to attack with. So, in this position, I do believe that as this is your best bishop, and this is theoretically my bad bishop, Trading this bishop for this one is not a good option here. So maybe the best way to proceed could have been simply to play bishop e2. It's probably the way I would have played, because I don't want to trade this bishop for this one. Remember that in chess we have to compare the dynamic value of the pieces and try to figure out if the trades are good for us or not. You know, because it is not enough to say, oh, I'm gonna trade this piece with this one, and just because they are the same value or something. That's not enough. We have to calculate what's going on in terms of the dynamics, what piece is better in terms of the mobility of the position, and what will be better for me to keep and what will be better for me to get rid of, right? So in this position, the bishop that we have here on d3 seems like it is worth a lot for us, because it's the best bishop that we have, and if we move it to e2, we're trying to push g4 in the future, and that could be good for us. So I think bishop e2 is better than trading on f5, because once you trade here, positionally, it doesn't look good. First of all, because you want to play e4, right? That's one of the ideas here, and you are eliminating one of the pieces which is pushing e4. Also, some other thing that's happening is that you're keeping this bishop on c1, which is horrible. This bishop on g7 is not like the best bishop ever right now, but you know that sometimes the idea is just that I want to move this knight, and then I'll play f6 and I'll break on e5, you know? It's something that happens a lot in this kind of stone walls positions, something that happens a lot in many queen's pawns position, actually. When you have a knight on e5, you want to get rid of that, you usually move your knight from f6 and push f6 and then e5. Something possible, playable, nothing weird or anything like that. But see how positionally here, if you make an evaluation, you'll notice that your bishop on d3 is worth more than trading it, you know? That's, again, a lack of thinking about what's the best for your position in terms of positional game. So this bishop better than to trade this one for this one. So bishop e2, the move that I would have played. Maybe the computer will throw some other moves, but I like simply bishop e2 in this position. So bishop takes f5, and see how it is also helping me to regroup my pieces here, which is something that you didn't notice as well due to a lack of evaluation, right? How come? Because if I do take on f5, what I am doing is basically I'm maneuvering with my knight to go to e4. So if you're evaluating the position here, you'll notice that or you'll try to see what are the best squares for the pieces which are not only your own pieces but the pieces of the other guy. So in this position you sit down, you think a little bit about it, and you say, well, what's the best square for the pieces of the black guy? e4, right? Like if I get a piece on e4, that's like a really nice piece, and also it will be almost as if I had a knight on e5 for the white pieces, right? But the advantage that I have, and there is a little subtle advantage, is that you have already moved your pawn to f4, meaning that you cannot play f3. So that means that my knight here is going to be stronger than your knight here, because this knight's going to be out, you know? So if I want to go there, how do I go there with the black pieces? Well, the maneuver is knight takes, knight e6, and knight e4. And then if I do so, then I can go here with my other knight and play f6 and get rid of your knight. This is what I was thinking, you know? And this is something important. Because see how positionally...
I'm just helping you on the way, basically. Take pieces, then move at the same time.
Exactly. We have to be constantly thinking about all these little things. And that's the importance of playing longer time controls. Like if you play maybe 10, 15 minutes game and you have the chance to analyze them and to see what's going on, that's even better. So knight takes, queen e2, right? Knight to d6. And see how your queen on e2, okay, it's a queen on e2, but it's not doing that much, you know? Like queen e2, it's a move that I don't like that much. Maybe you have to try to figure out how to develop this bishop here. And the way that I can see to develop the bishop is just to play b3 and bishop a3. Not bishop b2, because then that doesn't make sense, right? These two pawns are too stuck here as for them to mean anything. But bishop a3 makes sense because now your bishop is out of your chain of pawns. And then you're generating some game here. It's not like the best square ever, because even if you got your bishop there, it doesn't seem like you're winning anything, or the position is just increasing too much in terms of the value. But see how if your bishop is on a3, it is not on c1, you know? And that's important, because on c1 it's the worst square. So on a3 it's better. So also your rook will be better situated, and your position could make some more sense. So queen e2, alright, your queen goes to e2, but what's your queen doing on e2 that's not doing on e1?
It's defending the g4 square so I can kick your knight. Basically, that's what my thinking was at least.
But I wanted to get rid of my knight on f5. I wanted to come here, you know?
Oh, so that's what, you're making total sense, because I'm just pushing you in the right direction you want your pieces.
Exactly. It's like you're forcing me to do what I want to do. So I go like, all right, if you want to do so, then queen e2, I go to d6, a4, b4 now. And I think b4 has its own problems as well, which is that, all right, it looks like you're getting a space, right? It looks like, I'm going to get a space. But the problem is that you want your bishop to go to a3, and now you're blockading it on b4.
Yeah.
So that's another problem that you have. So maybe a way to proceed, which would be a little bit more healthy, b3, bishop a3 maybe, and then c4 to break the position and try to get some activity here. But even then, that seems a little bit hard to play, because the knights are going to be really strong here. So I do believe that v3 makes more sense in this position, and maybe even c4 directly, but I don't like c4 directly so much because I want to finish my development. So b3 and then bishop a3 and then c4 seems like the way I would try to play. So b4, see how one more time, lack of evaluation here in terms of what do I want to do and what my pieces are doing, and even what they will be doing in the future, right? Because this bishop here needs to go here. Not here to this square where it will be defending this pawn, because this pawn is better defended with a rook, you know? Because with a rook, I'm pushing the pawn up and breaking the center and fighting for the position. So I hope that makes sense, right? So knight e4. I'm just doing what I wanted to do. Now my knight is coming here. See how the best piece that you have is this knight here, and even it is not doing that much, you know? Like, I usually talk about this in my videos, that sometimes a piece can look really nice, you know? It can seem like it is really well situated, everything is working all right, but at the same time, it is not doing that much, you know? And that's something that we want to avoid. We want our pieces to work together so that they are actually doing something. Sometimes we have the beautiful piece situated on the center and it's doing nothing, like in this position, right? Like, what are you doing with this? Is not going anywhere. On the other hand, this knight here is threatening on c3. That's annoying. It is being defended by this piece, and also in the future I'm just gonna break the center and all the pieces are gonna work with this knight so that everything comes to fruition, if that makes sense. So bishop b2, alright, you need to defend and see how your bishop is now on the square that you didn't want your bishop to be. You want your bishop to be here and without this pawn, and a rook defending the pawn so that you can push c4. So f6, getting rid of the guy, you go backwards, queen e7, and the idea here is that I want all my pieces to come to break on e5, and then I want this rook to come here, and I want everybody to generate edge rays, and this knight here doesn't look so nice. If on e5 it wasn't doing that much, here on g4 it's doing nothing, so that's even better for me. So I guess maybe this knight should go to f3, because if you go to g4 then it goes to f2 and it's even more passive, you know? So knight f3 seems better. Of course we want to play knight f3 maybe, but that doesn't seem nice anymore, because the idea of moving your knight to f3 is to keep this knight on e5, so not so good. And maybe knight d3, but no, knight d3 doesn't look nice, it just looks horrible as well, because you do not have any square to go to afterwards, like
and I'm moving away from your king.
I don't know, I don't like knight d3 either, because from here you do not have many squares to go to. Probably f3 is the square that I like, because even though you do not have a lot to do with it, you can still try to take here, and then you can come back to d2 and try to take there, you know? Like after knight takes, for example, knight takes, and this knight, of course I'm throwing just an idea, this is a line here. So let's say a6 or something weird, and then you can go to d2 and get rid of the knight, you know? And that would have been better. So and in d3 you do not have that option. So f6, knight here, queen e7, a4, and see how the action is happening on the center, and instead of you working on the center, you decide to work on one of the flanks, and that's too slow, you know? I talk about this and I call it going to the party, you know? It is a term that I made up, of course, it is not a chess term, but going to the party means that you want to move your pieces generally to the place where things are happening, you know? So if the place where things are happening is here, right, on the center, things are collapsing here, right? This is a place where the party is happening. Go to the party and just dance and do whatever you want, but do it on the party. Because if you play here where nothing is happening, then you're generally just losing some tempo, you know? So going to the party,
the same thing.
Yeah.
When I play Stonewall, I often see opponents do the same thing against me when I have like all the action towards the Black King, and they just like throw their pieces on the queen side, just the same as I did now, basically.
Exactly, and then you just kill them, right?
Yeah.
Exactly, and you see that it works. So you want to go to the party, that's cool. And a4 here, not going to the party, right? This is far away from the party, you're drinking alone here, that's sad. So you do not want that. H5, your knight goes to f2, and now, well, see how the knight is just losing another tempo here, giving him even more space, and also the only square that you have to go with your knight is to d3, which is the square that I didn't want to go in the first place. So those are like many problems, you know. And knight takes, because I see that as you have moved your pawns here, now I have a really weak square on c4 to take advantage of. And I wanted to put a knight there because I noticed that the knight here is going to be dominating your bishop totally because it has no squares. Also, it is forcing your queen to defend your bishop and your pawn. That's called overworking, you know, when the piece is too tired working on two sides at the same place.
Exactly how it felt, overworked. All my pieces were just like scrambling, trying to defend each other, basically.
Exactly. See how knight takes, knight c4, queen c1. And what's happening here is that your queen has to go backwards to defend here, and see how what I told you before is what's happening. You wanted this rook to come here to defend this pawn, not this bishop. And also, to defend this pawn, you want this rook, not the queen. You know, because then you'll be trying to push this pawn and trying to generate pressure on the center and stuff. So those are things that you want to do. And your pieces just look like totally unharmonious. Even though the only piece that works for me is the knight on c4 because the bishop is still trapped. I just want to open the position and see how... remember that in the stone wall, you're generating weaknesses when you play that. That's why I don't like to play the stone wall that much with white pieces, because, or even with black pieces, because, like, of course, in terms of the whoa, I forgot the name of the country, which with the when you play this with the black pieces, it is a Dutch, right?
Okay.
Yeah, I forgot the name of the country. So I don't like to play Dutch as well because I feel kind of trapped all the time and I have many weaknesses. So in this position, the weaknesses that you have is this pawn here, you know? And now what's going on in my mind, you know? Beyond anything. Here what's going on in my mind is that I want to be able to attack the pawn on e3, which seems to be the most easier point to attack on the position. You know, the point on c3 is weak, but it's not so easy to attack. So how do I do that? If I get to open this diagonal here, then my bishop can come and I can generate threats on it. Also, your queen will be really overworked, and then this pawn on e3 is gonna fall. If not, I can bring my rook here, try to take here somewhere, and open files. And even if I get rid of this debility here, I can try to get into the position with my queen and my rooks and generate trouble in your position. So see how this is really dangerous. You know, it's getting really annoying to play. So e5, I want to open. b4. I don't want to trade this knight for this bishop, so I move my queen to e6. Because otherwise this bishop a3, then I have to take, and this knight is worth more than this bishop. What we have said before, you know, what's the relative value and the dynamic value of a piece in comparison with the static value, because the static value is just simply 3 points, right? The bishop is 3 points, the knight is 3 points, maybe a little bit better when the position is open, but this knight here is worth, I don't know how to define the worth of this knight, but it's just better, you know. It's not like you can objectively say this knight is worth 5 points or something, unless you're a computer. You just have to feel it out of instinct, right?
It felt like a 10-point bishop, basically, or a knight.
Oh, you see? But it is not so easy to define what's the value of this knight. I just know that this knight is better than this bishop, and I don't want to trade that. And if you do that a lot, like if you do not trade the pieces which are better than the other pieces, then you win in chess, like many games. So that's important for us, right? Queen e6. The bishop goes to a3, which was a square that you wanted it to be, like, who knows how many moves ago, like maybe 50 moves. Now you go there, but it's not effective anymore, because the idea was to play c4, and now you cannot play c4. So, not working. Remember that we wanted to play rook c1, and then c4. And now it's not possible anymore. So, rook f7, I don't want to give you a quality or anything like that. Knight d3. Alright, your knight goes to d3 where it is doing nothing, but it is not doing nothing here, right? So, b6, because I don't want your knight to be doing nothing here. That's kind of dangerous. I have to be careful. So, pawn takes, and then rook takes, queen takes, and see how your position is just totally out of the party. Because the party has changed, you know?
Well, there's probably a good party because all my pieces are down there, but it's a different party. It's the wrong party, basically.
Exactly. Because the party is now here, the party is here, the party is in the king side, and your pieces are on the queen side. So, the party is pretty far away from the place your pieces are. So, your queen is overworked, your knight on d3 is doing nothing. Literally, it has no square at all. Like, it cannot come here, it cannot come here, it cannot, if it goes backwards, then it's doing nothing. The pawn on e3 is really weak, the bishop is going to h6, there are no defenders to the pawn, the rook is coming to e8, quite simply. Your rook needs your queen to move, for you to move it into the game, and even if you move your queen, then your bishop is not defended, so your rook cannot come into the game. See how many problems out of positional game, you know, it's just like amazing. And then this is gonna be solved through tactics. So, knight d4, well, you do not have a lot to do, right? Just knight b4, maybe getting into c6, but one more time, see how a beautiful piece on c6, but what are you doing with that? You're doing basically the same as the knight here, you know? But with your knight here. That's the difficulty of chess, you know? It is so relative. There are so many things. It's like Einstein did this game or something. So, bishop h6. Now the bishop is not doing anything here. There are too many pawns defending. I want to take advantage of your debility in this square. And I'm going there. Knight c2. Knight goes backwards. Rook e8. The pieces are going to the party. Queen e1. Now you are in Ed's race here also. So Queen f5, because I believe that I'm kind of into the party here, but I want to be even more. So I'm gonna come here and generate more pressure. Queen e2. See how your queen is also defending this knight and your rook is defending the bishop, which makes them quite passive, you know, because they do not have any action. So Queen e5. Rook f1, and pawn takes, and knight takes. And what I am doing, see, one more time, out of the party, totally, and then everything is gonna collapse. So, bishop takes, 2 pawns down, this knight totally out, this bishop in a long diagonal, controlling everything, the rook in the right place, and now you just need to trade some pieces. You know, it wasn't spectacular or anything, it wasn't like a big combination, but in terms of the strategy, see how many little things I am thinking of, and then at the end it's just a lot, you know. So that's why we have to get rid of the too simple thinking, you know, like, I want to do this because of that, and then you play that. No, we have to stop that, you know. We have to think more about the situation. We have to be constantly thinking about the repercussions of our moves. And at this point, it's gonna be hard, you know, because it feels so natural to think more than 2 or 3 moves ahead and stuff. It feels really weird, right? Like, oh, it's really hard for me to see what's gonna happen. Or in terms of the strategy, the patterns simply do not appear on the board. But if you keep working on this, I do believe that this is gonna work just amazingly. So, I think this was really fun. If anything, you can always send a message. I'm gonna be around.